What is going on, guys? DragonTamerBlayde here, back with some more Elder Scrolls Legends, and it's another day, so it is another Frostfall card reveal. So we're going to spend today just talking about another new card, what I think about it, and where I think it could be used. So let's skip all the fluff and hop right on into the card. Here it is right here. It's called Shadowmarking. It is a 3-cost action and agility with the effect, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose one to give to your opponent, and you draw the other 2. So card advantage wise, this is neutral, and that's why I think a lot of people have kind of jumped on the bandwagon of thinking this card isn't good. But let's talk about some of the positive things that this card does really well first. So first, for 3 Magicka, you're drawing 2 cards. That's pretty good, obviously. So right off the bat, that's a solid effect. It has a downside, which drawing 2 cards has to have a downside or a condition or something. So you draw 2, you give your opponent 1. You're mostly going to give your opponent whatever the worst card out of those 3 is. But also at the same time, since it's in your deck, odds are it's not going to be a horrible card, but we'll get to that point later on. So it's draw 2 with a downside. But in addition to drawing 2, for 3 Magicka, you are digging into your deck 3 cards deep in 1. So things like Merchant's Camel, you draw 1 card, discard 2, and that card sees play as a 1/4 for 4 because you dig 3 cards deep and only get to keep 1 of them. Obviously, there's graveyard synergy and stuff like that involved with Camel as well, but its most common use is just digging through your deck faster. And in that vein, I think Shadowmarking will see play alongside or as a replacement for Camel. In decks that run Camel, you may think about running Shadowmarking instead. Maybe you run both if you really just want to burn through your deck. It's at least an option that does something similar to Camel, and you get to keep 2 of the cards instead of just 1. So I think in that front, Shadowmarking is a pretty darn good card. Where do I think this card is going to be at its best? I think you may see some aggressive decks run Shadowmarking just as a way of early on just flooding their hand with resources so they can keep putting those resources onto the board. And for the most part, an aggressive deck, if I give you a, a Rift Thane, I don't really care for the most part because I'm going to keep beating you in the face. So aggressive decks can kind of get away with giving their opponent cards because they don't really care how many cards their opponent has. They just want to throw stuff onto the board and smack their opponent in the face over and over again. So I think aggressive decks are going to be able to make use out of Shadowmarking. Control decks, maybe, depending on your opponent. Like, if I give my aggro opponent Ice Storm, I know they're not going to use it, and I also get to dig for some more answers to what they're doing. Not that you're going to give your aggro opponent Ice Storm, but just a card that they can't use or won't use. Control decks may be able to make some use out of this. I don't think it'll be as common. I also don't think many mid-range decks will be running this card, really. I don't think you can afford that tempo loss on turn 3 to just do nothing but draw cards. I think mid-range decks are going to want to stick to things like Thieves Guild Recruit in green, even Corner Club Gambler to an extent. Corner Club Gambler is a bit more risky than Shadowmarking, but you at least get the 4/3 body attached to it. So I think mid-range decks are going to want to stick with Corner Club Gambler in that sense. So I think aggro decks definitely can make use out of it. Control decks maybe, depending on how you form your deck and what your opponent is. I don't think it's necessarily a 3 of in control decks, but maybe you can afford to run 1 or 2 copies of this just to help dig into your late game faster. But where I think Shadowmarking is really going to shine and kind of do its best work is in control decks, not control decks, combo decks that is. The first thing that came to mind when I was looking at this card was Abomination Scout. Justin beats my ass with this deck all the time. But the key thing with Abomination Scout is, like, 44 cards in that deck are complete garbage. The entire purpose is just burn through your deck as fast as possible, sacrifice these cheap garbage cards, get them in the discard so you can journey, and then fill your board with +5/+5 creatures. To that end, if you want to dig through your deck to find your journey, your Disciple of Namira, to an extent your Thieves Guild Fence or Moonsugar Smugglers, those key cards that kind of help you get your combo going. If you want to dig through your deck, Shadowmarking is perfect for that. You get to dig 3 cards deep, keep 2 of them, which you'll choose whatever your 2 most essential combo cards are, and you're going to give your opponent what is essentially a useless card. If I give my opponent a Moonsugar Smuggler, or if I give my opponent a Blackreach Rebuilder, or any number of those cards that Abomination Scout plays, you lose almost nothing because your opponent's deck can't make use out of those cards the way you can. And you're gaining this huge advantage of drawing 2 cards and digging 3 deep. So I think this is an amazing card for Abomination Scout. But even just more so in general, combo decks as a whole. So if I'm playing Market Archer, Market Assassin, just a whole lot of different combo decks that you're looking for specific pieces and trying to dig through your deck to get to a specific point in your deck. Even to a lesser extent, Thorana Ice Spike OTK. Just being able to dig with this card and keeping targeted cards in there, I think is an incredibly powerful effect for those combo decks to make them more consistent, which is kind of scary considering how consistent some combo decks can be. But at the same time, they're not all super consistent. So this is, as a fan of a lot of the more meme level combo decks, I like this card in that regard. I'm sure when you're playing this card, as is with Merchant's Camel or any other card that makes you discard or has a downside, I'm sure there'll be times where you play Shadowmarking and you pull like 3 superstar cards and you have to give your opponent a really good card. That's just going to happen. It's a risk that you take playing this card. But kind of similar how in the vein of aggro decks didn't really care about playing Mudcrab Merchant, because even if you gave your opponent something good, you were gaining your card for yourself. So you didn't really care about giving your opponent something else for the most part. But I'm sure there was feel bad times where you had to give your opponent something really good. That's going to happen with this card. But making your deck much more consistent, drawing 2 cards, being able to just dig through your deck and find quality cards, I think makes Shadowmarking incredibly playable. And it may also result in some decks that weren't good enough before or didn't have enough draw or consistency to get off the ground before. I think Shadowmarking might kind of open the door for some other decks to either be more viable, so maybe something goes from meme level to somewhat viable, or something goes from non-existent to existent because of Shadowmarking. Like I said, I still think Abomination Scout is the best deck for this card at the moment, but I do think a lot of other combo decks and even aggressive, and like I said, to an extent, some control decks can make use out of it. But yeah, what do you guys think about this card? Where are you guys planning on using it? Let me know down below in the comments section. We'll continue to look at these card reveals as they happen. We have another one tomorrow happening on Justin Larson's channel, and then one later in the week going on in the official TESL presentation at TwitchCon. So we'll cover those cards, obviously, as soon as they get revealed. But yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. As always, thank you all very much for watching. I'm DragonTamerBlayde, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.